I wanted to ask you briefly, actually, about SB 323, the new Inspector of
Right.
Elections
It's a
requirements.
Senate bill that
Hmm.
passed this last session, which has caused a lot of grief in the industry because the requirements are so onerous. Um,
Cumbersome,
yes.
absolutely.
And the bill was very poorly written. It has a lot of internal inconsistencies. It's caused a lot of intended and unintended consequences for associations. And everyone, all associations in California, of which there are between 50 and 60,000 associations, housing probably about 10 million citizens in California. They all have to rewrite their election rules, and they are looking at having to amend their bylaws. The election cycle for associations used to be 45 to 60 days. Now they're looking at 120 days, so 4 months of election that's involved. And for volunteers, that's just too much. And so as soon as they end an election, 8 months later, they're starting another one, having to spend money on completely independent inspectors, not being able to establish their own qualifications as to who can be on the board and who can't, all being imposed by the legislature. Actually, it was one woman in her organization who decided that she wanted to make changes to the industry, and she got Senator Wieckowski to carry the bill for her. And unfortunately, it passed, and now we're dealing with the aftermath.
I was blown away by there's a list of, I think it's 7 or 8 different entities that could serve as the Inspector of Elections. And just reading through it, I was just shocked at how little thought was put into who could actually serve
Yes.
as an Inspector of Elections, given the implications beyond that election.
Yeah, and in fact, the insurance issues involving inspectors, which you wrote about, you and Tim Klein, which I thought was a great article because you touched on something that nobody else had raised yet, and that was, are they truly insured? How do you deal with insurance, and what kind of insurance do you require? And what about indemnity provisions in these agreements? Because all of them have indemnity provisions. Because the
Mhm.
inspectors don't want to get sued. They know that associations are litigious, and that if somebody's unhappy, they sue the association, but they automatically sue the inspector at the same time.
And you can't blame the inspector for putting that indemnity provision in their contract
Not at
if
all.
the manager or the board is not going to notice it. And, it's sad, but they want to protect themselves.
Yes. And the requirements now for elections are so difficult that it's going to be very easy for associations to misstep, to miss something, to not do something entirely correct. And then on technical issues, they can get sued.
Hmm.
And so we're expecting to see a wave of litigation involving now the new election rules.
So, from an insurance best practices standpoint, I'll just say that, we recommend it. I'm sure you do as well. When you hire that inspector of elections company, you make sure that they are naming the association as additionally insured on their own policy and that they have a policy in place.
Yes. Yes. And then the problem is that there are so many new startups now as inspectors
Hmm.
that I don't think all of them actually have insurance. They're carrying insurance. And so that's something that association boards need to be careful about to make sure that they, one, hand the contract over to legal counsel to review and check with insurance to make sure that they do have proper insurance.
And one of the obstacles that I've heard raised from some community managers is that, say you hire this inspector of elections company, you're paying them the money, you're handing off passing the liability on to them, but then you can't get quorum at the board meeting.
Yes.
And then you got to pay them to come out again.
And maybe a third time. And so one of the things that we're recommending to associations statewide is that they amend their governing documents to eliminate quorum requirements for the election of directors, cumulative voting, to eliminate proxies, and eliminate, there are a number of things that they can do that would make their elections a lot easier. And just getting rid of the cumulative voting and quorum requirements is the easiest because then you only hold elections once. And then another thing would be elections by acclamation. When the number of directors is less than or equal to the number of open spots, the open seats, then there's no need to hold the expensive election. And so that's another thing that we're recommending go into the bylaws and election rules.
Interesting.